At InDigital, we know the public safety professionals hold themselves to a high standard. In fact, standard doesn't do it justice. In over 25 years working alongside you, carrying millions of calls over our IP networks, your dedication has inspired us. That's why our ESI Net goes beyond industry standards, not only I3 compliant, but designed to adapt to future development for a network you can count on when it matters most. Learn more at indigital.net.
Here in Greenville County, we have 8 different places where a 911 call can be answered.
It is the largest county in South Carolina. It's a challenge.
The type of information that a telecommunicator gets from Radius Plus is location-based technology. You can see where the caller is, if they have a medical issue, if they speak a different language. They're immediately able to text to that caller in their native language. It reduces response times because it immediately gets first responders where they need to be.
If Within the Trenches has ever taught you something, open your eyes to what it is like to be a 911 dispatcher, or has inspired you to become one, then help support us and join our Patreon. Get exclusive bonus content, one-of-a-kind swag, discounts on merchandise, ad-free early access to new episodes, and much more. To join, please visit patreon.com/WTT podcast. And if you're an industry partner, we have something for you as well. And now, for the show.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. This episode is sponsored by InDigital, as well as Carbine and Rapid Deploy, and a big shout out, as always, to patrons. Thank you so very much for everything, and there's so much stuff that's going on. We're already, it's Valentine's Day right now. It's Valentine's Day. Of course, when you get this, it'll be a week later. However, it's Valentine's Day today, and just the month is going fast. Yesterday was the Super Bowl. It was an excellent one. It wasn't one-sided. It was pretty good, and things have just been excellent. So thank you for joining us here again for another amazing episode of Within the Trenches podcast. And we are going right into conference season, so there's going to be so many sessions that I'll be doing, presenting on, whether it be Imagine Listening or maybe a keynote or closing or anything like that. But there's going to be a lot of episodes that are coming up, because with all of these conferences that are coming up, whether it be state conferences or the national ones, I will be there recording episodes. So there'll be so many more episodes with stories that are just very powerful and impactful. So make sure to look out for that, because there is so much more to come. I am excited about my guest today. I've known her for a while now, and it has just been excellent. And one of those first meetings was out at the North Carolina conference a few years back when I was there as the keynote speaker. And that, I would have to say, that conference alone is probably one of the best ones I've been to. And we'll probably get into a little bit of that as well as we're sharing my guest story. But my guest today is Melanie Neal, and she is the executive director with Guilford Metro 911 out of North Carolina. Hey, yo.
Hey, Ricardo, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing great. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day to you as well. It is, it's Monday. It's a Monday, but it's a good one. It has been excellent. Garfield doesn't like Mondays for certain reasons, and I've seen that sometimes, but, this one is a good one. This has been a good day so far.
It has here, too.
Excellent.
Yep.
Now, as I see you, and those who are listening, they won't be able to see you, of course, because they're just on audio. But I always dig that you all are in, kind of like the uniform. You got the patches going, and yeah, excellent, very nice. I dig it.
Yep.
So we've known each other for a little while now, like I was saying, in the beginning, and that conference back when I was there. That one was something else. I've not ever been there before, and there was an amphitheater where all of the industry partners were and stuff. And I remember when I was getting ready to do the Imagine Listening session, I was looking on the sheet to see where I was going to be at, and someone was like, "Oh, you're in the amphitheater," and I thought, "What?" I'm going to be in the amphitheater with all of the industry partners and everything in there. They're going to be listening to us. And I thought, oh, that's going to be interesting. And it was, because the place was packed. All the seats were packed. There were people that were standing. And I remember getting on the microphone, and I said to all of them that were there, I said, if you don't know what dispatch is all about, you're about to hear something. So get ready. And it wasn't just a few minutes into the Imagine Listening session that a lot of those industry partners were standing right in back of the dispatchers, listening to those stories and taking them in, and some of them getting pretty emotional as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the year when you came and were our keynote speaker. I was the outgoing president of our local chapter, and Brett Rim was incoming president. And that was such an amazing time for us, because we had never had anybody share our story openly like you did. And that's what needs to happen. And we just truly appreciate it. The industry appreciates it. But the vendors were amazed. They've never had the opportunity to hear it.
Yeah, when we were done with all of that, later on, the hospitality night, later on that night, a few of them walked up to me and said, I know what dispatch does, but I didn't know it like that. And they said thank you, and they're like, I'm going to go around and talk to some of these folks and say thank you, because I had no idea. I had no idea it was that intense. So I was like, it's pretty intense. Yeah.
It is. Yes.
Yeah, it can be intense for sure. So that one was such an excellent one. There's that one in Wisconsin and Indiana. There's a lot of them that just, I don't know what it was. It was my first time there, but it felt like family when I walked in. Like, everyone was just so awesome, and it was an excellent time. And I look forward to going back to that conference again, because that was a really good one.
Yeah, we look forward to having you again.
So I want to go back in time. I want to learn more about you, because we've known each other for a while now, but I don't know how you got into public safety to begin with. And that's what this podcast is all about, is sharing these 911 stories, these public safety stories, and how everyone got into it, because everyone has a unique story. And on top of that, it's also, the calls that people take or the incidents that they deal with. And, a lot of them started out, some of them started out in the field and then ended up coming into dispatch, and then they just fell in love with it and they stayed in dispatch instead of going back out. So for you, how did you get involved in public safety to begin with?
So that is exactly how I got involved.
Yeah.
I went to work with the Rockingham County Sheriff's Office in June of 1988 as a deputy sheriff. And I was a deputy sheriff for a little over 10 and a half years, and moved to Guilford County from Rockingham County at the end of 96. And I had a 2-year-old in 98, had a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and decided it would probably be a little safer for me to not be a sheriff's deputy. And so started looking into other public safety lines of work. And since we had moved to Guilford County, I was looking at Guilford County, and they needed 911 telecommunicators. And so I applied, ended up getting the position, and absolutely fell in love with the role. I mean, literally fell in love with the role. I have enjoyed every minute of it. So I started with them in March of 1999 and have been here ever since.
Oh, wow. So what got you interested in public safety, though, in the beginning? You go into the sheriff's department, but do you come from a family of public safety, or do you just kind of fall into it in the beginning?
Well, the sheriff in Rockingham County actually recruited me. I was working at a bank and had been working at a bank for 3 years, and he would come in every so often to find out if I was 21 yet. And he was saying that my memory alone, that he just wanted to hire me because I do have a knack for having a really, really good memory. And so he came in one day and he said, "Are you 21 yet?" I said, "Sheriff, I just turned 21 back in October." He said, "Well, I need you to come to work for me." And so that was history. I did. So
Oh, that's amazing. There's a lot of folks that I've spoken to who have kind of been like that, where they're working in other jobs that have nothing to do with public safety, really. And there are folks that come in who are in public safety and they see the way they work, like with you, specifically memorization. That is a big thing that you need. But also, I've been with directors and such where we've gone to dinners or whatever, and the person who is there taking our order and everything, they're just on it, very witty, but
Mhm.
also memorization is there. They're multitasking like crazy, and they end up giving them a card and say, we're hiring right now and you would be excellent
I do that
in
a lot.
dispatch. Yeah,
I do
see.
that a lot.
Yeah,
I carry recruitment cards with me.
that is, see, and that's awesome. That is excellent. So, that person saw something in you, you end up going into it, and you did it for, you said 10 years, about 10 years and such,
Mhm,
but you had to kind of rethink about it after having kids and everything. And I can see that. There's a lot of well, one, there of course there's stress, right? But also, the danger part of it. And you got your kids, you got to think about it and everything else, and you start looking for other places to go.
mhm,
So you already have that, all that experience being out on the road and listening to the radio, hearing what it's
mhm.
like and all. And so did you end up going to do any sit-alongs or anything when you were thinking about going into dispatch?
Well, we do them after the fact.
Mhm.
So when you were hired with Guilford County, because they dispatched fire, EMS, and law enforcement for the sheriff's office, they would have you go do ride-alongs after you were hired and got into training. And so riding with EMS was a really, really unique situation for me because I had, like I said, always been the law enforcement side of it.
Mhm.
And one of my most memorable calls with riding with them that day was a CPR call. And they were handing me the meds saying, give me this, give me this, and give me this. And I'm like, I did not sign on for this. This is not why I'm here.
Oh, man. I can't even imagine that. Yeah, getting ready and they're like, "All right, you're gonna come with us. You might see a
Mhm,
few things,"
mhm.
and bam, there's CPR right there.
In an auto shop, no less. So
Oh, that is craziness. Yeah,
it was.
thinking about some of my ride-alongs. So when I was in dispatch and we were doing the ride-alongs for training, we had to do one with the sheriff's department and with the state police. And I had two with the state and two, no, just one with the sheriff's department. And that was, I didn't get anything like that. It was mostly with the state. We were chasing cars down on the highway, and that was pretty crazy because I had never gone lights and sirens before like that. I
Mhm,
had done so when I very first started in Florida, but it was a small city police department. So, we were just going from one side to the other of town. So it wasn't really that far. But with the state police or the sheriff's department, that first time that I was just, straight up lights and sirens. No one told me that I needed to brace myself either. Like, you would think you would know, but you're not really thinking of it. And the sheriff's, the deputy is kind of laughing at me as I'm like flying back and forth, hitting the side of the window. I'm like, okay, throw my arms out to kind of brace myself. And, then you're getting motion sickness, and it was crazy, but not like that. Not like that where
yeah,
you're giving them stuff for CPR and all. And so you end up getting past that part of it. You've got
mhm,
some of that experience too now.
mhm,
And you go back in. What was that training like for you? Because now, you've been out in the field and you're hands-on, right?
mhm,
But when
mhm.
you come in, you're just on the phone and you're basically, it's like your hands are tied behind your back because now it's just your voice. Was that different? Like, was that difficult for you at all? Because you kind of wanted to be there, like kind of reach through the phone to help them?
Right. And so it's very different for me because the county that I came from to Guilford County was a very rural county.
Hmm.
And so when I came from Rockingham County to Guilford, Rockingham at that time was still writing everything down to give us the call, like on a legal pad.
Yeah.
And so I come to Guilford County, and I'll never forget the emergency services director when he took me into the comm center for the first time and took me around all the consoles, and they were working on their CAD system. And when he finished, he said, "Do you have any questions?" And I said, "Where are the pens and paper?" And he said, "For what?" And I said, "To write down the calls." And he said, "No, you have to enter the calls as they're giving them to you on the phone." And I went, oh, 'cause we had never had to do that. And so I thought, oh, okay, so we're going to have to step up our game a little bit. And, because the call processing times have to be much quicker when you're doing that. And so the biggest difference for me was realizing that I wasn't going to be responding to the call. I was sending someone to respond to the call. And so that was very different for me. I had to learn how to not speak as a law enforcement officer and speak as a 911 telecommunicator. And so that was a big change for me, because when I moved over to Guilford County, I also remained a reserve deputy sheriff for 15 more years. And so I volunteered with the sheriff's office here. And so I would go out and work on patrol here while I was also working in dispatch full time. And so it was a big benefit, because when you work both sides of the radio, you know what the other side needs. And so that was a big plus for me.
Oh, see, I can see where, that would be, that would be hard in the beginning, not being able to do, certain things, but also, because you've got different protocols, different policies and everything else. And I always go back to this, but there was a guy that I used to work with who had come from EMS, and he was still doing EMS and everything, but he was in there with us. And I remember he and I and another supervisor, we kind of got into it a little bit, because we were saying, like, you can't do that, or you can't say that over the phone. It's like, well, this is the way we do it out in the field. I said, I know, but you're not out in the field. We've got other policies, and like, we could get sued for that, man. Like, we can't. And I don't know what it was, but we were just telling him, if you go off of our own policies, we could get in trouble. Like, there's differences and other things you have to stick with. And it was a little hard for him to grasp that, but it only took, a few weeks, and he was fine. He was good, but it was a little bit in the beginning that he had to get used to. So with all of that, so how was the training then for you, starting out? And it's funny though, how you're saying, over there they had the paper and the pen and stuff, and now you're here, and technology is obviously different, and you're going to be typing in that stuff. Did you find that, kind of difficult at all, trying to do that transition?
Well, I did have, I am a very fast typist. And so I didn't have a hard time transitioning into entering the information into CAD. The way that they trained people when I came to work there in 99 was you trained on call take first. And once you were signed off on call take, then you would start training on the 3 different disciplines they had for fire dispatch, EMS dispatch, and law dispatch. And so, again, coming from a very rural county, when I started taking calls here in Greensboro, I never knew there were so many traffic accidents with rollovers until I came to work here. And I just was dumbfounded. I thought, how many people are in accidents here with rollovers? I just couldn't believe it, because it was so busy. And the law enforcement piece of it, it was back to back to back traffic stops. And you didn't see that in the rural areas at all. And so it really required much more of a listening ear, being on this side of the CAD rather than on the receiving side of the radio. And so I had to learn really quickly that the listening ear was really, really important when you were entering information into the CAD system that was going to be sent to the field responders. So that was the training. It took about 1.5 years for me to be signed off on every discipline we had. But I absolutely loved it. Like I said, there was so much more traffic here than we had in Rockingham County. It was a culture shock.
Well, so if you can, for those who are watching and listening, if you can kind of describe, a little bit, or break down both of those areas, in comparison, how many people, were probably working in dispatch in the, where you were at before, where you were out on the road, and how big of an area is it compared to Guilford Metro?
Okay, so in Rockingham County, when I was a deputy sheriff, they had 2 people that worked in dispatch. And when we had 6 officers out on patrol at one time. And then when I moved to Guilford County and came to work at the 911 center in Guilford County, they had 7 people on duty at one time in 1999. But their sheriff's office was actually divided up into 3 different districts, with each district having 7 or 8 officers on duty at a time. That was just for the county. We didn't dispatch the city at the time, so we only were responsible for the sheriff's office dispatch. But to go from a 6 on duty at one time sheriff's department to 21 on duty at a time. And now there's just an incredible amount of people that are on duty at one time. But that was back in 1999. So.
Oh, definitely a difference, but also because it's where you're at now, when you had started out and everything, being in a rural area, the last dispatch center that I was at, there was a huge chunk that was rural as well. And a lot of times, we would have people, and this, and a lot of people who come from dispatch too, listening to this, know this as well. That when people are in a high priority situation and they're, for lack of a better way to put it, they're freaking out on this emergency, which, that they should be, freaking out, when they're calling 911, I guess. There and it's in a rural area too. You got people telling you, just get them here, and sometimes you have to be real with them, and I would be real with the callers and say, look, I understand the officer, but the officer is not just around the corner waiting for something like to happen. Like, they're coming from a township away or something. I would tell them, they're coming from a little bit of ways away. I'm going to stay on the phone with you until they get there. And if not, if I have to put you on hold for any reason, do not hang up. I will be right back with you. When I put you on hold, you're not going to hear a beep. It's just going to be silent, but I swear I'll be right back with you. And being real with them, they would understand, and it would ease them a little bit, not always, but
Right.
being real with folks, they understood. So for you, being in a rural area as well, I can just imagine that, it would take long and you would have to do something similar to try to let them know people are getting there as fast as they can.
Right. Yep.
It's interesting though, when you have something like that going on, especially when you're first getting into dispatch and you have a call where it's taking a while for someone to get there, you have to continue talking, because the more you talk and stay calm as well, the caller stays calm, because you're keeping their mind busy, right, with what's going on, and
Right.
keeping their mind off of whatever emergency it is that's going on. I mean, you don't want them to put it out completely, but you want to keep them calm. But you also have to think of more stuff to talk to them about. Did you find that difficult ever, or was it just kind of another thing and you were just talking with them and doing what you were doing?
Yeah, and we before we consolidated and became
Mhm.
Guilford Metro 911, when we were two separate PSAPs, working for the county, again, the response was a little different than it was for the city because of the distance.
Mhm.
And so, like you said, a lot of times we would have to tell that caller, ma'am, I have to answer another 911 line, but if you'll bear with me, I'll be right back. Please don't hang up, because we weren't blessed with the staffing,
Mhm.
to just say somebody else can get that line. And so we had to do it. And so that was a very frequent conversation with callers. And those panicked callers sometimes that always say, why are you asking me all these questions? Just send somebody.
Yeah.
And so, and I say, ma'am, me asking these questions is not delaying help. I'm not the one dispatching the help. Somebody else is doing that for me. And a lot of times explaining that to a caller really helped me out,
Mhm.
to say, I'm not the one dispatching the help. I'm getting your information and somebody else is sending them, so a lot of times that really helped callers.
I think that's what's amazing about conversations like this that we're having,
Mhm.
and a lot of the conversations that I've had and those stories that are out there, because a lot of the general public listens to this podcast as well, and they've learned a lot about that if they're getting put on hold, they're not getting put on hold because they're just getting put on hold just because we don't want to talk to them or whatever. It's because there's other emergencies that are going on, and I remember telling people as well, your emergency isn't the only emergency going on right now. 911 does not stop.
Right.
So, and it was even to the point, and I've had people say, why would you put somebody on hold that you're giving CPR to? And I would tell them, it's because I'm the only one who can get the phone call at the time, and
Mhm.
other phones are ringing.
Yep.
And if they're doing textbook CPR and
Mhm.
help is on the way over there, I
Mhm.
have but a moment to put them on hold, because they're doing what they're supposed to be
Mhm.
doing. And I can pick up the phone and say, do you have an emergency, or can you hold? And a
Yep.
lot of times people will say, yes, I can hold, because they might have an emergency, but it's not that big of an emergency. And
Right.
sometimes, though, there'll be other people, though, that will say, no, I don't have an emergency. And I would say, okay, I need to put you on hold really quick. And then they would say, okay, no, I do. Okay, what's your emergency? And I remember this one specifically, and the person said something like, I need to know what the road conditions are. And I said,
Oh, God.
are you hurt right now or anything? Like, no. I'm like, okay, that's not an emergency. I'm actually giving someone CPR instructions on another line. And that person went, oh yeah, no, go ahead, I will wait as long as I need to, or whichever. And they would be fine. And that's one of
Mhm.
the things that you learn, is if you be straight with people, like you can be straight and firm with someone without sounding like a jerk,
Mhm.
and
Absolutely.
everything be okay.
Yep. Yeah, firm but empathetic.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that you learn when you're in this job, of how to speak to people, and everything, be okay. But also, on the other side of that coin, when you're talking to someone, especially right in the beginning, if you have a tone that could destroy the whole call right there,
Oh,
you
yes.
know?
I tell all of our new hires, the call starts with you.
Mhm.
And so if your attitude is reflected as a bad one, that can actually go out and reflect on the field responder. When
Right.
they get on the scene, these people can say, that call taker was a total jerk to me. What are you going to do different? Or that kind of thing. And so I tell them, please be empathetic. Realize it may not be an emergency to you, but it is to them.
Mhm.
And so it's a struggle sometimes for people, especially when you're so short staffed and call after call after call. And, but it's very important to not create animosity for a field responder where there should be none.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And when we're talking about, these phone calls and everything as well, especially for you in the beginning when you first started, you talk about how you were learning to listen to everything. And for those who are watching and listening, that dispatch ear, as I've called it, that's one of those things that you develop, because when you're taking these phone calls, sometimes someone can be talking to you and you realize, like, right away, like, something doesn't sound right.
Hmm.
So then you start listening to everything beyond their voice
Hmm.
in their environment to see if you hear anything else. And sometimes you can hear someone whispering, or you can hear, just rustling around, or different weird noises, and you got to start typing that in.
Hmm.
What was that like for you when you first started building that and listening to that environment, and everyone else in the room too?
Yeah. So listening to not only, that's what I was going to say, listening to not only the background of the call you're taking,
Hmm.
but what everyone else in the comm center is taking. Because a lot of times when you have something going on, you'll get many calls on it. And if I hear somebody else saying something similar to what my person's saying, I'll immediately hit my mute switch and say, hey, is that on Calvary Street? Whatever. And if they say yes, then we know we've got like both parties involved in a domestic. We've
Yes.
got both of them on the call. And so you not only have to have that listening ear for what's going on with the caller's environment, but with the comm center's environment as well. We've actually had calls where we had 4 different people taking the same call, and only one of them was reporting somebody shot. And it
Oh,
did, yeah, and it did it up. The person was shot, but only one of the callers was reporting that. And so then the other 3, I was like, is somebody there shot? Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Lord, can you lead with that?
right.
But yeah, yeah, you really, really have to learn to listen to the call itself and what's going on around you in the center, because so many times it can be more than one person calling.
Yeah, and fully agree. I
Mhm.
remember taking phone calls from, like, a domestic, and nothing physical, just verbal domestic, some of those, and having one of the parties on the line, and the same thing, the same as you, hearing one of my partners on the other side of the room talking to the other person, and me saying, hitting the mute, like, put them on hold really quick, and then I pick up that line and say, okay, are you separated? And then I've got them both on the line. I'm like, you guys need to stay separated. You're fine at the moment.
Mhm.
She's outside, you're inside.
Mhm.
Officers are getting there. Don't worry about it. All right, all right. I'm like, okay. Like, and
Exactly, exactly.
there's so much to it, but it's
Mhm.
it's a job that I don't regret, and I would never change, because it was, even though there was, and some people who hear this, what I'm about to say, might think I'm weird and all for saying it, or why am I saying it, but the job was fun. you know, that in the sense that, you know, I'm there, I'm helping people, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and especially working with those folks there in the center, but also all those out in the field as well. It was a fun job. You know,
Mhm.
the incident types are always the same, right? Usually the same, but the situations, they're always different. And once you think you've taken the call,
Mhm.
something else happens.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I love about it. It is never the same day twice.
Hmm.
I was definitely not cut out to work in a factory on a line. I've got to have different. I mean, when you sit down, you never know what kind of calls you're going to take for that day. And like I said, I absolutely loved it. It was not monotonous work at all.
Yes, yeah, no, and in our old phone system that we had, when if you just lifted the handset, it would immediately, or no, I'm sorry, if you hit the button to pick up the phone, it immediately went to speakerphone. And a lot of times, as soon as you hit that button, because sometimes we would race to get the call first, and we did that a lot with trainees and stuff too. Like, all right, we're gonna race, we're gonna see, you know, if you can pick this up before me, and you would hit the button and you would hear someone screaming automatically, and you would see everyone in the room like sit up like,
Mhm.
oh crap, okay, we're about to get into this.
Yep.
And one of them ended up being that it was actually someone's TV in the background. It was a kid playing in the phone, and it was the TV in the background that had screaming, and
Oh,
everything was fine, but oh, man, that's making me a little anxious right now. Like, I
yeah.
remember that.
Yeah. High alert. High alert.
Yeah. Yeah, so much stuff that was going on.
Mhm.
So you, as you mentioned at the beginning, you worked every discipline, you know,
Mhm.
fire, EMS, and law enforcement and everything. Um, and, and also for those who are listening who don't understand about what I'm about to ask you, what was your favorite to work?
Oh,
Was it
EMS.
EMS? Okay.
EMS
Oh,
dispatch by a long shot.
okay. I have to know why. Why was that your most favorite?
Okay, so here in Guilford County, going along the lines of me not liking monotonous work.
Hmm.
So EMS dispatch is the busiest dispatch location we have, not because of the number of calls for service, but
Hmm.
because of the traffic on the radio. So, like the Greensboro Police Department has the highest number of calls for service by a long shot, but they do a large majority of their work by mobile.
Hmm.
Checking in route, check and arrive, those type of things. Well, EMS, even though they could check in route and arrive mobile, their supervisors required them to still verbalize everything. And so it was always a busyness on the radio, keeping up with those units. And then we had to move them. We have a marvelous system which tells me, based on 5 years of historical data, where the next busy spurt's going to be. And so you have to constantly be watching that map and moving units to cover that area. But it was just a constant busy position, and I absolutely loved staying busy. I mean, when we would finish our 12 hours, I'd be like, is it time to go? I mean, I didn't realize it was time to go. I mean, I loved it because it was so busy.
Oh, that is pretty, you know, I agree. I love that. That is pretty awesome because it's better to have it the way you said it, where you get to the end of those 12 hours, you're like, oh, for real, that was it,
Mhm.
versus working your ass off and it being completely crazy. And you look at the time and it's been only an hour. Like, no
Right.
way. Like, it's only been an hour. I thought it was time to go home.
Yes, I actually worked in the comm center this past Saturday night and worked fire dispatch,
Mhm.
and the night shift started at 18:30 at 6:30. And so I looked up at like 1940 and I was like, that's it. That's all it is. Just 1940. I was like, I'm gonna need y'all to pick this pace up a little bit for me, people. Come on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that marvelous system that you're talking about, I saw it once in here in Fort Wayne, the local EMS
Mhm.
center that's out here, and I was watching it and I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me that all this data from all these years, like, it's showing hotspots? I was like, yeah, this is a heat map, that this is this and this and this. Like, no way. I was like, so you guys set up your EMS close to those spots because they're those spots that are most likely going to have those type of medicals? And they're like, yeah, we just set them there, and you know, it's been really good, all this, you know, predictive stuff in the heat maps. I thought, no way.
It's
Like, that
awesome.
that's a yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. We've had it since 2006, and it is amazingly accurate. It truly is.
That is something else. See,
Mhm.
and when I first started in dispatch, I started in Central Florida. It was a small police department. We had nothing like that. But also our medicals, we would only take the initial call. So the call would come into us, we would get the pertinent information, and then we would transfer them over to county radio or central dispatch for the county.
Mhm.
But then I would have to punch in like this 5-digit code to set off the tones for fire rescue to go
Mhm.
out.
Yes. Yep.
There's a huge radio with one of those gooseneck microphones and
Ooh,
everything,
that's
and you
back in the day.
yes, and but that was 2001. That's
Ooh,
how old some of the equipment was there. I mean, it still
wow.
worked. It still looked pristine, new,
Mhm.
but it was old.
Oh, yes. That is old. That's an old alerting way right there.
Oh, yes. So when you're going through, you had first started, do you remember any of those early 911 calls that you were taking as whether it be through training or when you were first off on your own, some of those earlier calls?
Yeah, I remember several of them.
Hmm.
One of the very first calls I took for service was back when we were at Guilford County 911, and it was from one of our frequent flyers. But everybody called him Cowboy,
Hmm.
and so when you answered a 911 line, you knew it was Cowboy right away because he was always verbally abusive to anybody that he talked to.
Yeah.
He was always drunk and always demanding a deputy,
Mhm.
always demanding a deputy, and trying to find out, why do you need a deputy? Cowboy, why do you need a deputy? And I just, he was one of the very first calls for service that I took. And like I said, he was always abusive on the phone, always drunk. Um, and he eventually, like 3 years later, he ended up committing suicide one night on the phone with my supervisor when I was on night shift.
Oh, no way.
Sure did. He ended up barricading himself in the house, and like I said, everybody knew Cowboy,
Hmm.
and she tried talking to him, but after about 3 hours, he ended up shooting himself, and so, but he that was one of the calls. Probably the worst call I ever took that still sticks with me was a sorry,
Oh, no, it's okay. Take your time, please.
it was a traffic accident call. Um, the person that called it in was actually the mother following her husband and two daughters in another vehicle, and a box truck ran a stop sign and hit them in front of her, and it killed her 9-year-old daughter, and her 11-year-old daughter was airlifted to one of the trauma centers, and her husband was airlifted to the other trauma center, and all three of them died. And as a mother, I can't imagine witnessing my entire family killed. And it was very hard dealing with that one.
I can imagine. It's in this, this job that we've done, it sticks with us,
Yeah.
and how long ago was this?
That was in 2002.
2002, and it's still, as we're talking here, and you see, getting emotional and everything. This is sometimes people have said to me, you guys aren't, first responders really, because you're not out there on the road. You don't get to see, all of this. But what we hear and what we see in our heads, that's just as bad.
Yep.
And it sticks with us, obviously, as we're here talking and everything, that it sticks with you,
Mhm.
because you think about your own family, you think about your own kids, and we are empaths in that sense, where we take these calls and we put ourselves in the caller's shoes,
Mhm.
and we relate to them, and that sticks with us. And
Yep.
sometimes our own experiences that we've had in life, if we have a call that comes in that's similar, I feel like sometimes those calls were meant for us,
Mhm.
because we have that experience, we're able to help that person more than another person, who might not have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And with you, having this and carrying it with you as well, it's good to share it and put it out there. But also for newer hires that you might have in the position that
Mm-hmm.
you have the ability to talk to them and tell them this is okay, for you to feel this and share this, and this might happen to you. And then, you're able to share that story and say, it still sticks with me, but I'm here, and I help. I want to help.
Mm-hmm.
Was
I frequently have new hires when I go in. I talk to them on their first day of hire,
Mhm.
welcome them, to our department, and then I talk to them the day before they're assigned to a shift in the 911 center. And so, without fail, they all say, what's some of the worst calls you've ever taken? And so I always share that one.
Mhm.
And like I said, I get emotional every time I share it.
I thank you for sharing that sincerely. That sharing that, not just to those newer folks, but everyone here. There, I can almost guarantee someone will take something from that, because there's a lot of people who have listened and have heard different stories and have realized that they're not alone. That, in the beginning, they feel like maybe I'm the only one who's dealing with this. But they hear stories like the one that you just shared. And again, they realize that they're not alone and they're able to move forward. A lot of people have said in the beginning that they wanted to quit because they didn't think that they would be able to handle it, or that there was no one else who was dealing with anything else. They almost felt like they were weak because of how they were feeling. But then, hearing other people's stories, they realize that there's courage in sharing what it
Mhm.
is that they're sharing. Was there, and if I may ask, was there any type of debriefing or anything when this happened in 2002?
It was, but 911 was not a part of it.
See, and that is changing though,
It
right?
is. It is. Here, it's
Yeah.
changing here. It changed here about 5 years ago,
Mhm.
thank goodness. But yeah, EMS and the local fire service, it was out in the county where it happened down on Highway 62,
Mhm.
and the local fire department, highway patrol, sheriff's office, and EMS were all invited, and we were not.
Wow.
Yep.
And so, again, a lot of it has changed, and in the beginning, I remember too, being in dispatch and stuff, and not getting to go to those debriefings and wondering why. But then, when we ended up getting invited to one and we went and we started sharing our information, I remember someone saying, "Why have we not had you guys here
Mhm.
before? Like, you bring another side of the story that we had no idea." And they actually got some comfort out of this, some of the stuff that we were talking about. And I can imagine that's the same with you all now as well.
Yeah, about 5 years later, I'll never forget this either. I answered a 911 call, and this gentleman said, he told me exactly where he was on Creek Ridge Road over here in Greensboro. And he said, I'm having a heart attack and I'm getting ready to die.
Mhm.
And I said, sir, we're not going to let that happen. Stay on the phone with me. I got the address, went through the ProQA. And as I'm talking to him, he said, let me give you my wife's name and phone number. I need you to call her, tell her I love her. And I said, sir, I've got you on the phone right here. You're going to be fine. Stayed on the phone with him until the paramedics and the fire department got there. And within 2 minutes of them arriving, they came back and said CPR in progress, communications code 47, and then like 3 or 4 minutes later, they said post code 47, got him back. And then on the way to the hospital, they said code 47 again, CPR in progress again. And he passed away. And that was such a shock to me because
Mhm.
he was talking to me when they got there. And, and so when I called his wife and said, I told her who I was, and I said, I'm with Guilford Metro 911, and ambulance is transporting your husband to the hospital, and he gave us your name and number and would like, for you to meet the ambulance there. And she said, is he okay? And I said, I was talking to him when the ambulance arrived. That was really the best I could say to her.
Mhm.
And he didn't make it, but I was just shocked that I was talking to him when they arrived, and 2 minutes later he coded.
It's it's a hard thing, right? Especially when you're calling family. I remember someone kind of giving me crap about admitting that I had to lie to someone on the phone. The situation, and this was like the last 2 weeks that I was in dispatch, and I swear to God, it felt like the dispatch gods were giving me every shit call, like on the way out, like, you're gonna get out. Well, we're gonna, almost like, a gang thing, like, we're beating you out. Like,
Just
this
for
is
you.
right. Yeah, we're gonna give you every hard call. And in this specific one, this gentleman called me, and he said to me, my ex, soon to be ex-wife, has been very depressed and everything. We're starting to go through this divorce, and I haven't heard from her. I check on her every day, and I haven't heard from her, and I'm worried. He goes, I'm going to go and check on her. And I said, okay, well, call me when you get there, but we're going to send people out that way as well. And he was already on his way, so he beat everyone before they got there. And she had committed suicide, and he found her. And I'm on the phone with him, and I said, do you have anyone that you want me to call? And he said, I need you to call my daughter and have her come over here. And this is why people gave me crap, was because I called and told her, your dad needs you to go to your mom's house. And she said, is my mom okay? Is everything okay? And I told her, I'm not sure. I was just told to call you so that you could get there. So, people had said, why didn't you just tell her? And the reason is because you don't want to create other victims.
Right.
Had I told her exactly what happened,
Mhm.
she would have been racing to that house.
Mhm.
What if she would have gotten into that accident? That's
Yep.
going to be on me, because
Right.
I was the one who caused that.
Mhm.
I told her. And she ended up getting there. And after I explained it, people were like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, you got to do that sometimes. You can't tell people the truth right away, because
Mhm.
something like that might happen. And so that was definitely, it was a hard thing, but it's also something that we have to do,
Mhm.
and that sticks with us, right?
Yep, that's correct.
It's, oh man, yeah, it's definitely a hard thing, especially when you're first starting out and going through calls like this, and you don't always have someone to talk to. And then the one debriefing that we had was really, it was the county sending us a counselor to talk to us. And there was 3 of us in there with the counselor, and we told him what happened. And he said, well, how does that make you feel? And we just kind of sat there and we looked at each other, and I thought, this isn't the right thing.
Mhm. No, not the right environment for that.
Right. Yeah. Like,
No.
I'm not about to lay on the table and tell you all of
Mm-mm.
this stuff, man. Like, I'm sure you're amazing at the job that you do, but you don't come from public safety.
Mm-mm.
It was a few days afterward, they had another gentleman come and talk to us, and he was from dispatch. And actually, all he did was walk around and just kind of talk to us in general. It wasn't even about the incident. It was just in general. And after that, we talked to him about other things. But that's what he noticed, that we were working hard, and he didn't want to interject, but he was just kind of talking in general and stuff. And then it ended up being fine. But that first part of it, it was like, like, this is not the way to talk to us.
Mhm. Right, correct. Agreed.
Yes, but a lot of things have definitely changed since you
Mhm.
and I started out. You started out in '99. I started out in 2001,
Mhm.
and a lot of that in the beginning, like, no one ever told us.
Uh-uh.
No one ever really said. They said, you're a 911. You can imagine what kind of calls you're going to end up taking. But even though going in knowing all of that,
Mhm.
I was never told, you might feel better if you share what it is
Mhm.
that you're going through, or you might feel better if you do this or that. And that wasn't there. So for a long time, no one ever wanted to look weak by asking for help.
That's correct.
I'm so glad that things have changed.
Me too. Me
Hmm.
too. I know in a recent in-service training last year, we had a particularly bad call at our center, where one of our communicators committed suicide. That was in February of 2020.
Hmm.
And in an in-service training in 2021, I was announcing that we were getting new mental wellness help for public safety here in Greensboro, to include 10 free visits per event for our employees.
Hmm.
And I said, it is so important that you have someone to talk to. And I said, I will openly tell all of y'all that I've got a counselor on call. I said, she's on speed dial in my phone, and she knows if I need her, if I call, she makes arrangements to see me within 2 days. And one of the employees came to see me after the training, and he said, "Thank you for sharing that and making us feel like it's okay that we need to talk to somebody." And I said, "Absolutely, it's okay. That's what they're there for." It's a network of over 1,000 providers that they can choose from. I mean, it is such a wonderful new program for us.
Mhm. That and that right there in itself is very powerful, right? Because you're leading the way here
Hmm.
in with the group as the executive director and everything, and to say that is very powerful, because yes, that people hear that and like, oh, well then yeah, it is okay. If she's doing this, then and it's working for her, then maybe it'll work for me as well. And that's what we need is hearing more about that and all. Now, as you were in dispatch, so you started out in the sheriff's department, you
Hmm.
end up in dispatch and everything, you fall in love with it, you've got these hard calls and everything else that you're dealing with. Did you end up moving up to like be a trainer and then a supervisor, or did you go straight to executive director?
No, so went in March of '99
Hmm.
and completed my training actually in November of 2000, and had done all on day shift. And then in December of 2000, they had an assistant supervisor position come open, and I applied for that and was fortunate enough to get it, but it was on night shift. And so I did accept the promotion to assistant supervisor, but I was on night shift for 5.5 years after that. And then I was assistant supervisor from December of 2000 until February of 2008. And I was promoted to a senior supervisor role in 2008. And then I was promoted to the operations manager's role over the 911 center in November of 2010, and then promoted to the director in July of 2015.
Man, they're just moving up and moving up.
So just worked my way up there, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, that's awesome then. So what pushed you? What really pushed you to continue to move up and move up to the spot that you're at now? Was it anything early on, maybe a phone call or you're a trainer or something that really pushed you, that because a lot of times when people are moving up, they want to make change. They want to help out that new generation of dispatch that's coming in to help mold them and teach them. This is the way I learned. It might not have been the best at the time, but I want to make a change. I want to help do this. What was it for you?
well, I found out that the higher up you go, the more you can advocate and fight for your people.
Hmm.
And so when I was an assistant supervisor, that was more of a working supervisor role and title, where you were expected to work in the 911 center and be a part of what was going on. The senior supervisor role was written as more of an administrative role, that they just really wanted you in the center available to your team should they need you. But I could never do that.
Hmm.
I always worked a position within the 911 center. I would finish any administrative roles I had going that morning by 9:30 or 10, and then I came in the center and went to work. And so when I was a senior supervisor, I had a team of 23 that reported to me. And I'll never forget when I was promoted to the operations manager role, the former director called me in and said, "I need you to understand that you're now fighting for 92 people and not just 23."
Oh,
Because
geez.
before, I mean, I had fought for my A team, my A shift.
Yeah.
That's who I fought for. And he said, "You can't show favoritism. You got to fight for all 92, all four teams, because now you're responsible for the good things that happen to them." And so,
No
and then,
pressure.
yeah, yeah. And then as I moved up to the director's role, then I'm fighting for the 5 divisions in my department, not just the 911 center. And so, I would prefer to fight for, my team. And I mean, this year alone, we've accomplished so many great things for those employees in the 911 center, and we're hoping it'll really help with our staffing, recruitment, and retention. But we have accomplished so many great things just in the last year, and I don't want to jinx it. So,
Yeah. So with that, you talk about this journey, and everything that you've done, everything that you've gone through, all of this experience and all. And you said it yourself there, you found that the higher you go, you are able to, make more change and get in there. So as we've heard your story and everything, which is an amazing one. Thank you so much for sharing it. You are actually running for the second VP position at NENA, for those who are watching and listening, which is the National Emergency Number Association. And what I want to know here is, why is it that you're running for this spot? Because, as we're talking, and I can only imagine it's to continue to help make change, not just for all the folks that work for you, but for everyone, because they run, they do a lot of policies and just a lot of different things, a lot of membership benefits and everything for those who are members of NENA. So this would be all of, the United States now. It's just not your spot.
Right.
Now it's even more so, that you would be in there and helping to make more change in 911.
Yeah, so the primary reason that I'm running is because the reclassification efforts to classify telecommunicators to protected service personnel from the current secretarial administrative role that they're showing for the federal level. For the local and state level, I've been very active. I'm also on the North Carolina State 911 board. I have fought for a long time locally to classify our people where they need to be. And so for the last 7 years, I have attended the 911 Goes to Washington event. And I was there back in 2018, lobbying those congressmen and the senators to change that classification when it was open to be changed. And that didn't go through. But that allowed me to make contacts with those congressional people and the senatorial people. And they reached out to me. Actually, still got emails, and they said, we realize this didn't go through, but we think if you will fight more on a state level and we see more states recognize 911 as first responders, that will help you fight at the federal level. And so we've done that, for the last 3 years. And I just decided last year that I want to be an advocate for the 911 telecommunicators across this country. I truly feel like if we can have the reclassification done, it will help recruitment and retention. Because it is baffling to me to see the calls, the emotional and mental stress that this job puts on us, and we're considered secretarial. I want to advocate for everybody at this point. I want them to see staffing is a critical issue right now. But reclassification will help that. There's a pride in being considered public safety. And when you find out that you're not, it's just like a shot in the gut to say, you're doing all of this, but. And so I really want to be an advocate on a national level rather than just local.
See, and that's one that is superb. That is excellent. And two, there's a lot of folks out there, as you hear, as you're saying, finding out that we're not part of that group. It's kind of like, are you serious? Like, the call starts with us. Right. And it stays with us, where a lot of people out there on the road, not that it doesn't stay with them, it does stay with them as well in certain situations, but just because we're not out there doesn't mean that we're not suffering the same type of traumas, because a lot of times the stuff that we are piecing together, this puzzle in our brains for this specific phone call, could be actually way worse than what it is that's going on there. But then there are other times where it's just spot on. And, a lot of this reclassification as well, not initially, not in the beginning, but later on, funding wise, can also go towards training, two, mental health and wellness. Like, there's so many different things that can come from it. And I think that this continued fight is so good, even more so because there's so many people who are learning even more that we're not just answering the phone.
Right. And I think if we can be reclassified as public safety, it'll also give us parity in federal grant funding. I really do. There's a ton of public safety grants out there, but because we're not considered public safety, we don't have that opportunity. And I really, really hope we're successful.
Well, I wish you all the luck with this bid, going into, the voting and such for NENA, for second VP, and just everything that you're doing, wanting to do change and, make change for those who are coming in, for those who have been there already. And some of them who, there's a lot of people who just think, well, it's always been this way, it's fine. It's not fine, because there's a lot of things that it's always been that way that needs to change. And it's a new day. That's what folks like you and I and many others are trying to do, is open the eyes of those who don't know what 911 is all about, what it's really like to take a phone call, how it sticks with us, the stories that you shared, how they stay with us emotionally, and just all of that. And so this has been awesome to have you on, but I have one last question for you.
Okay.
If you could go back in time and talk to yourself from the beginning of your dispatch career, what would you tell yourself?
Gosh, I don't know, because I love what I do so much still 33 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, I actually tell the new hires that come to work for me, if you love your job after 30 years as much as I do, you're in great shape, because I truly love what I do. But I think I probably would have started in 911 from the get-go, because it is a difference. Even though the mental challenges are the same, it is a difference not having to be on the scene and seeing what they see. I know that's coming, but it's not here yet.
Right.
So I do think I would probably, even though the sheriff recruited me way back in the day, I think I probably would have said, let's go ahead and start with 911 and stick with it, because it is truly a different public safety career than actually responding to the scene.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for being on and sharing your story. We blew through this hour. It didn't even feel like it.
It did not. It
Yeah.
did not. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, I thank you. And I will be right back here with you in just one moment. And for those who are watching and listening right now, if you have any comments, questions, or you want to be a guest on the show, make sure to email us, and that'll be wttpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is wttpodcast@gmail.com. And you can follow us on Twitter. That is @91podcast. You can like us on Facebook. That is facebook.com/Within the Trenches podcast. This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, Rapid Deploy, as well as Carbine. And again, thank you, patrons, for everything. If you want to be a patron and support us, you can check us out, and that's going to be patreon.com/WTT podcast. For patrons only, they get a perk of audio versions of the DRT, which is the Dispatchers Roundtable, as well as Open Mic Live. And when you become a patron of the podcast, there are stickers, swag, all types of things that you can get, as well as discounts to the store, as well as early released episodes and other bonus content. So again, check us out. It's patreon.com/WTT podcast. This can be seen on Facebook, YouTube, as well as Twitter. And then you can hear 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.